On the flight deck, it is loud. Standing next to a fighter jet taking off, you can feel it in your whole body. I mean, we're given helmets with goggles and, giant industrial earmuffs, and it still is loud. It completely permeates through you. Hi, my name is Jake Epstein. I'm a defense reporter here at Business Insider. I recently came back from the Middle East where I had the chance to embark on 2 U.S. Navy ships in the Red Sea to get a sense of what's happening on the front lines of the fight against the Houthis. I was on one carrier, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, and then from there I took a helicopter to a destroyer, the USS Gravely. The most nerve-wracking part for me was landing and taking off from the aircraft carrier. But to be with the Navy, I mean, these are incredibly well-defended ships. So it wasn't any concern about the Houthi threat. But landing on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the sea was enough to make me a little uneasy. I did not have a window seat coming in. The only way I knew that we were about to land is because the crew on the aircraft told us to get in a brace position and that we were going to be landing within a couple of seconds. The plane shakes around. I mean, it goes from traveling at a fast speed to 0 miles per hour in 2 or 3 seconds. And the same goes for taking off. When we landed on the Eisenhower, it was hot. It was a bit of a shock when the cargo door came down and I saw that I was on an aircraft carrier in the middle of the sea. There were a ton of crew members on the deck, people wearing different vests to indicate their different jobs. There were fighter jets moving around. Aircraft were constantly taking off and landing in cycles. So, we'd watch it happen for a few minutes and then they would come in and land, or they'll stay airborne a little bit longer. While the planes are taking off and landing, there's crew members, refueling them and performing maintenance and rearming them if needed. So there's just a lot happening all the time. The commander of the strike group that, the Eisenhower is a part of said that they were launching aircraft every hour to hour and a half. So it is very, it's very constant. I was running on adrenaline the whole time, not really sleeping a lot. There was obviously places to sleep and shower and rest for a second. I mean, there's a ship store. From the outside looking in, it might seem a little bit chaotic, but it's obviously very orderly because everything works so seamlessly. The Eisenhower, as an aircraft carrier, is a floating city, for a lack of a better term. The carrier has more than 5,000 sailors that are basically, calling it home during the current deployment. The Gravely's a destroyer. It was smaller, a couple hundred sailors. There's a combat information center that's inside the destroyer. We got to take a look at that. That is staffed all the time. Any sort of weapon or interceptor or whatever that would leave the ship, the process starts there. So that's where, decisions are made. That's where the threats are tracked. That's kind of like the brain of where the ship is defended from. It's dimly lit, a lot of screens, radars, digital maps, and so it's staffed all the time. The Houthis are basically firing drones and missiles on a routine basis, sometimes multiple days in a row, into international shipping lanes off of the coast of Yemen, where U.S. Navy ships are located, where commercial ships are transiting. The Houthis have said repeatedly that their actions are directly a result of Israel's ground invasion of Gaza. However, you'll see U.S. officials are pushing back on this quite often because the ships that are under attack and are not necessarily connected to Israel. In early January, there was a pretty large-scale attack by the Houthis. Since then, there's been several rounds of coordinated airstrikes between the U.S. and the U.K. on Houthi sites across Yemen, targeting air defenses and weapon storage facilities and radars and stuff like that. The U.S. has also been conducting preemptive strikes, they'll say self-defense strikes, on a routine basis. The idea is to take out Houthi drones and missiles before they can even launch. So the U.S. military will say that it has identified, a drone or a missile that is loaded or, prepared to launch or ready to launch against international shipping lanes and poses an imminent threat. The Houthis have still managed to get missiles and drones in the air, and we've still seen the U.S. Navy shoot down missiles and drones in the air, and we've also seen them hit commercial ships. So while the preemptive strikes are happening around the clock. The Houthis are still able to get some of their threats airborne. The anti-ship ballistic missile threat, this is obviously a new threat that we've seen in a conflict theater, because this is the first time that the U.S. Navy has engaged with these threats. It is learning a lot from these interceptions, basically, gathering information about its weapon system and learning, that the systems that, have been tested and are performing as they would hope, because, we've seen the Navy shoot them down. So yeah, it's definitely a very serious threat in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. But it's something that the U.S. Navy is paying close attention to, because this could be a continuous problem down the line should the U.S. ever go to war with China. What remains to be seen, though, is how often the Houthis are getting, rearmed, and what remains of their inventory. So lots of unknowns as to how much of a dent the U.S. has put in their attacking capabilities. From the Navy's perspective, you've had people say repeatedly, "We'll be here as long as the president needs. We'll be here as long as we need to be," until the Houthis stop.